Hey there, welcome to our special needs and hot tamales training. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the situations that sometimes we run into while working with tiny humans at Camp4Kids and some tips on how to handle certain circumstances you might find yourself in. And so the first thing I want to review are the core values of shown and known and together is better. And we really like to focus on those two core values during this time because we love our campers, right? That they are here to be shown the love of Jesus and to be known for who they are and who God created them to be. And sometimes that is a little tricky, right? We're all fallen people, and sometimes we do certain things that aren't wonderful, and it makes it a little harder to love. And so we want to tell you how we have trained the teens to handle special needs campers they might have, or what we like to call hot tamales. And so first of all, there needs to be recognition of the differences between those two types of campers. A special need is something that's diagnosed, something that we know our camper is struggling with. Maybe it's a physical need, maybe it's an allergy, maybe it's an emotional need. And we also recognize that we are not necessarily a full-scale special needs camp. And so there are going to be campers who just need more care and more attention than we're able to give them. And those are things that have all been considered as we've accepted our campers and prepared for camp. The second thing to know about is what we like to call our spicy meter. And so our hot tamales might be campers who are a little feisty in their demeanor. Maybe they're just super excited and bouncy. Maybe they don't recognize social norms, And so we have taught the teens to use the spicy meter just to kind of help us know what they're dealing with in their groups so that we can best support them. So for example, they might have a jalapeno who's a little spicy, add some flavor to their group, but it's fine. They're establishing boundaries with that camper. They're letting them know, you can stand up and spin in a circle during music because that brings you joy and you're not disrupting anyone. And I also recognize you're still paying attention, but maybe you're gonna be allowed to play with this stone during story. We're training them to recognize those kinds of things to help the students succeed in all of their activities. And so especially if you're a group mom or an activity leader or somebody who's working with the different larger groups, hey, is it okay that this kid is spinning in circles and, rubbing a rock, whatever the case may be? You can check in with the counselor and they can say, oh yeah, I've already discussed this with them. If it gets distracting, we can change tactics, things like that. Then we've got habaneros. Maybe they're medium spicy, and that's where we encourage the counselors to set those boundaries, to work on identifying things that might be setting the camper off. Maybe they are dealing with some sensory processing issues, and maybe they get really overstimulated when they're at a large activity, and so they need to sit further back. Maybe they need to cover their ears. Maybe they need to do something a little bit differently. Maybe it's, sometimes we just have some habanero moments in our lives where our sibling, you might remember this, was just touching you or staring at you, and while it wasn't a big deal, all of a sudden it goes from not a big deal, not a big deal, not a big deal to, oh my gosh, if you touch me one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. And so helping them recognize how to diffuse those type of situations. And if they have a Carolina Reaper, that's muy caliente. They're seeking out a group mom. They're coming to a director. And this is a situation that really needs some adult intervention because boundaries have been set and they have not been followed. Maybe a child is throwing a temper tantrum, it happens, or being disrespectful, and so things need to be taken to a next level. But it sounds silly, but it's just a better way for us to communicate with the teens about the situations they're dealing with without having to say, oh my goodness, my camper is being such a brat. That's not showing them the love of Jesus. And so it's a way that we're able to say, hey, this kid's struggling with something, we're helping them out, or I need more help, without making it a bigger deal or having anyone misconstrue what is trying to be communicated, or even overheard that would be hurtful if taken out of context. So some of the physical needs of our students might be allergies to bees or to grass. Maybe it's a food allergy, things like that. The best that we know them, we share those things with the counselors and they're aware, so that the group moms can have EpiPens or know what to do in certain circumstances as they arise. And we make the appropriate people aware of those to the best of our ability. Same with health needs. Some of the other special needs that maybe we will experience are how to help our campers with ADHD successfully have a great week at camp, really, which is what we're trying to do. And so that's dealing with impulse control, talking out of turn, focusing their energy on good and not distraction, things like that. And so we've given them tips and tricks on how to do that. Maybe, taking a break during crafts if they're getting a little too squirrely, or giving them a discrete item to fidget with, like that stone or something like that we've talked about. We've talked about helping the counselors give transition times or end time warnings, 5 more minutes until we head to the next thing, so that they can just help those kiddos prepare for what's coming. They're going to be promoting peer help. They're going to be offering choices, things like that. Sometimes students have ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder. And so we've helped them learn how to avoid power struggles, how to set firm expectations and reasonable consequences that they can follow up with. And so especially if you know that a teenager has a student who struggles with these things, it's really helpful if you work with the counselor, because they're with them from activity to activity, and they're helping them establish those boundaries and those reasonable consequences. And so let's say Timmy is disobeying during story, and the counselor is saying, okay, I need you to listen, or this is going to happen. As an adult, we want to step right in, right? And we say, okay, you just lost 5 minutes of swim time because you were disobeying, where that undermines what the counselor was working on and makes it confusing for the camper. And so we just want to try to help ease that flow the best that we can. And so we just really want to encourage you to talk with the teens, see if they need help with something, see what they're doing, and then offer suggestions or help if they are needing it. Sometimes we will also have students on the autism spectrum, and it's the same thing, that we are trying to coach our students, our teen counselors, to use positive commands and feedback to say things like, please sit down with the group, instead of don't stand up. Our presentation matters. And I know there's the old saying, you catch more flies with honey, but it is true for our campers as well. And sometimes we get overwhelmed as adults too, when there are a lot of little people looking at us and it seems chaotic, and we just want to gain control of the situation. So we are trying to encourage the teens who are also in those situations to use positive reinforcement, to give feedback that will help get the rest of the group there without it being demanding and bossy and mean. I think that we can all agree that we would hate for a guest to be driving by in a golf cart and hear us screaming at children to sit down, shut up, and listen. And sometimes there are days that's just what we want to do, right? But if we're able to say things like, if you can hear my voice, clap your hands one time, and use positive strategies to gain their attention instead of screaming, yelling, it makes it a better experience for everyone. And it keeps our blood pressures down. And so we have, as I was saying, guided the teens on how to give positive reinforcement, how to use clear and simple, straightforward word choices, how to help pick up on the cues of their students, and how to guide them through anything that they might be dealing with. And we've also sometimes have pineapples and rutabagas. And so that's really just our silly way of saying that sometimes people are just different than us. Sometimes we all have different interests. We all have things that we love or certain hobbies that we like to talk about. And that doesn't mean that a kid is weird or that they are less lovable. It's just part of how Jesus is working in their life. It's how God created them. And it's okay if they are a Civil War buff and you know nothing about the Civil War. We can still share the love of Jesus and make sure that they are shown that love well. I don't like how I said any of that. I'm going to start that part over. Okay. Take two. Sometimes we have students we refer to as pineapples and rutabagas. And that's just our silly little way of reminding ourselves that we're all different. And just because somebody has a unique interest or maybe is fascinated by something that we don't particularly enjoy, that doesn't mean we don't treat them with love, right? Jesus loves them too. And so one of the things that we've talked about with the teens is really making sure that just because a kid says something that maybe seems off color to us, or something that seems, I don't mean off color like inappropriate off color, but just different than what we would expect them to be talking about, we don't need to snicker at them or ignore them just because they're quote unquote different. We're showing them the love of Jesus too, right? If we can't fit in as God's family at camp, then we're really doing something wrong. And so we really want to encourage the teens to be watching out for our pineapples or our rutabagas, who maybe are our loners and they prefer to be alone, or maybe are harder to read. And so we just want to make sure that we're doing a good job to include those kiddos too. And again, just reminding them that Jesus is a unifier, right? Even if we're different in 100 different ways, we can come together and accept one another because we love Jesus. A lot of the strategies I've talked about are just really doing positive. A lot of the strategies that we have encouraged our teens to use is establishing clear and positive expectations, using kindness to guide them, and encouragement. And I know that can sound really cheesy, but the idea here is that if we are redirecting and encouraging our campers, that's going to really set our week up for success. And it's going to avoid a lot of power struggles where they're saying, hey, I love how you listened at CCT. Can you please do that again for me at nature? Or I know you are able to run really fast, and I know our legs are tired, but let's see how fast we can run to our next activity. Or, hey, Susie, I love how you're following directions and listening right now. And that is a great way to get everyone else saying, I'm following directions and listening too. That kids love to be noticed. And it's a lot better for everyone when we're recognizing all the positive things we're doing instead of the negatives. And so that helps redirect their energy into maybe they are acting out because they want to be noticed, and now they're doing something positive, and we are able to recognize them for that thing. Choices are good, games are good, and we just really want them to know that phrasing matters. And we encourage them to support one another. As the counselors work together, they are trying to identify which campers respond best to which counselors. And so encouraging them to not let their feelings be hurt or let their pride get in the way, but to recognize that that sometimes we respond better to some people than others, and that we are a team, and so we can work together to do what's best for the campers. And I think that's important for us to hear as adults as well, because we like to think that we are really good at what we do. Of course we are, but also recognizing that, you know what, I don't have to be the one that the campers adore or want to confide in. That's why the teens are here. And so letting them take charge of that to the best they can, and then coming to me when they need help. So please go ahead and support the counselors, check in on them, but understand also that you do not have the expectation placed on you that you have to take over a situation. And we are trying to really help the teens recognize that it's okay for them to ask for help, and that we will be there as soon as they need that help. Final thought is just to remember that bullying is not tolerated. And so any bullying that we see happening, kids, teens alike, needs to be taken care of right away. I think that about covers it. But again, if you have any questions about any of these things, please reach out to myself or to Tracy, and we are happy to talk more about it with you.